My name is Constance Ann Graber, and I am 80 years old.
How does it feel being 80 years old?
Challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, my health is pretty good so far, but I cannot walk like I used to. I used to not really hike, but I go for walks a lot, and I can't really do that much anymore because I need the walker with me. But that's the only thing that's limiting me is that walker. Otherwise, I'd be out riding trains, being active in the Park City Museum if they'd let me, and just doing things. And I still like to help people. I help a couple people here. They just are getting older and they can't remember things and they can't hear things, and so we just chat, and I tell them, okay, this is the menu for today, and I enjoy doing that.
What's your first memory?
My first memory is a log cabin, a one-bedroom log cabin outside of Tigard, Oregon, a mile from Tualatin. Beautiful location. And I was born in Park City, and my mother died when I was 8 months old. So my father's sister adopted me unofficially, and she lived in San Francisco. And so I went as a year-old child, went to San Francisco with her and her husband. It was my aunt and uncle. And downstairs was, I should say upstairs, it was a flat. And upstairs is a young couple who were trying to have a child. And they were very good friends with my aunt and uncle. It turns out that couple was my husband's mother and father. We actually played together in a playpen. I'm 2 days older than he is, or was. And so that's kind of an interesting story. My mother-in-law always showed the picture of the two of us in a crib, playing, or playpen playing. And she got a big kick out of that because it's such an unusual story. Yeah. But after my aunt and uncle retired, or my uncle retired, we moved to this log cabin in Tigard. It was on 2 acres. It still had the wagon wheels. I would love to know the story behind that log cabin. I never did find that out. After I grew up, got married, and we went back to see it, it had been torn down into a business park. But I had my own swing. I had my own playhouse. I had lots of toys and a whole 2 acres to play in, and it was absolutely awesome. And then my uncle died, so we had to move into town because my aunt could no longer take care of the property. She and her husband were old enough to be my grandparents. And so she tried to get me to call them Grandma and Grandpa. And I did not do that. I called her Mom, and I did call my uncle Grandpa. I managed to get that, but I couldn't get rid of the Mom. And they kept me when I was 9 years old. Yeah, that's right. I was 9 years old. My father, who was a hoist operator for the Silver King mine in Park City, my mother and father had 4 children, and we lived in 2 houses in Park City, which I have located both of them. They're still there. He stayed here with my one sister. There were 4 children. My older sister went to San Diego, because she was ready to go to college. And my mother's sister took her and took care of her. My brother, who was the oldest child, he went into the Navy when he graduated from high school. And then I had a 4-year-old sister. And the 4-year-old sister stayed with my father. And when I was 9 years old, my aunt got a phone call from her brother. And he wanted to come see me. And he had just remarried to a lovely Mormon lady in Salt Lake City. She ran a nursing home. And somehow they met, got married, and he wanted me to meet them. I'd never seen my father before. And so he was out there for about 3 days, and my aunt was very nervous that he was going to ask to take me back because now he was married and he could take care of me. And his wife, bless her heart, told her that he was dying of cancer, and he just wanted to see me before he died. So I thought that was kind of neat. They took the train out. We saw a lot of relatives at the Portland train station. But so I had about 3 or 4 days with him and my new stepmother, and I continued to live with my aunt and uncle. And my uncle died. My father died when I was 10 years old. We did come here to Salt Lake City for the funeral. I remember a lot of that. The house they lived in, I have found that house since I've been here. And now it's being used for college kids. It's a big old house. And my stepmother died about 10 years ago. And she was like a grandmother to my kids. It was really touching. And but then we moved into town. And that was probably the saddest state of my life because my whole life just changed. I lost all my friends, and we ended up living with my aunt's daughter, and she unfortunately was an alcoholic, and she had one son, and so the 4 of us lived together in Portland, southeast Portland. And it just was not a pleasant experience. You're going through all the growing up on your own, type of thing, and learning about life and all that. And then I had to deal with this alcoholic daughter, alcoholic cousin is what she was. She'd give you the shirt off her back. She was just a really nice lady, except when she drank. And she was very verbally abusive. I wanted to get my aunt away from her, and that unfortunately didn't work out. But I go back 3 generations in Park City, in the Glenwood Cemetery mostly. My mother's buried in the Park City Cemetery, and my father had 4 plots. So now my older sister is buried there with her husband, and Roger and I will be buried there. Right now, Roger's in a box. I promised I wouldn't bury him in the ground until I was with him. And we got married September 3rd, 1966, and had an up and down marriage like every marriage does, but we had some wonderful memories. We have 2 children. Louisa was born in 1970, and James was born in 1972. And my husband I wanted 4 kids, and he said, no, 2's enough. So we just had the 2. And we were very, very active in a lot of different things. plus just taking care of the kids. I made clothes for my daughter in that period, and my husband was into trains big time. And when we were first married, he took me to Yosemite, and within about 3 weeks after we were married, and I fell in love with Yosemite. I still love Yosemite. We went there almost every year. We did not camp out like his family did. He'd gone to Yosemite for his family had gone there for about 3 generations. And but we went there every time we could, and took the kids with us. My husband, like I said, was into trains. He wanted eventually to own a steam engine and be part of a railroad group that was taking old right-of-way and restructuring it to have a tourist train operation, something like the Hebrew Creeper here. I enjoyed the trains because I liked the smell of the oil and the grease. My uncle used to come home from work, and he'd have that smell. So he must have worked in some kind of a train or greasy, oily situation. How my aunt ever got his clothes clean, I don't know. But he wanted then, after we looked like we started out with West Side, which is a lumber company, a rather well-known lumber company to this day in Tuolumne, California. We wanted to build our railroad there. It had 3 steam engines on the site. The buildings were still there. I remember we got an estimate for the broken glass in the engine house, and that was going to be $9,000 back in 1967. So anyway, none of that worked out. We ended up starting a railroad in Forestville, California. We had bought a brand new house in San Jose, California. My husband worked at Hewlett-Packard in Palo Alto, and then he had to commute 30 miles each way to San Jose, but it was the closest place that we could find housing that we could afford. And it was a beautiful little house, 3-bedroom house, brand new. I got to pick the carpeting and the flooring and all the colors I wanted. It was really cool. And we lived there until 1978. During this period, they started, my husband and his friends started a railroad in Forestville, California. So we drove on weekends. He bought a 69 Dodge pickup truck. We drove all the way to Forestville practically every weekend. I even took the kids with their playpens and their toys. At that point, we had both kids. And unfortunately, the railroad had to demise because the people in the town of Forestville did not want the sounds of steam trains in their backyard. So we closed down that railroad and never really got back into trying to establish a railroad tourist operation. My husband's friends, one of them went in the Army, stuff like that. So they just kind of dispersed. But we still had an interest in trains, and I would follow him anywhere that he wanted to go to do trains. In the process of this, we joined. Roger bought a 1956 DeSoto, and his grandfather helped him get it going. His grandfather was a Desoto mechanic for Waters Desoto in San Francisco. So Grandpa helped Roger learn how to work on Desotos and old cars. 56 was the year that Roger chose that he liked the best, and it was the most popular year of car in the club. The kids were great, going with us here, there, and everywhere. We joined the Mid-Peninsula Old Time Auto Club and took the kids with us there to events because Roger had purchased a 1932 Nash to have as a steam engine, or have to as an old car, 30s cars, to go with the steam engine. So he got that car running, and the kids were putting up with all of this. We were doing things with the kids too. So it was just a very busy but very pleasant life. And my husband's parents lived in Novato, California, and that was about an hour and a half away. So we would go up there quite frequently and stay there. And then when we got the railroad going, we would be up in Forestville. We actually, after, like I say, in 1978, we bought a house in Sebastopol because Roger had been transferred to Hewlett-Packard in Santa Rosa, a brand new facility. We went there and moved there. We bought a place with an acre of property. We wanted to raise our children in the country. We belonged to 4-H, and the kids were involved in that. My son in particular went to an electronics class, electrical engineering class, there on the lane where we lived. We lived on a private lane, and he learned electronics there. And he ended up getting an electronic engineer degree, just like his father. His father only had an AA degree. He was tired of school. He did not want to continue his education until we got up to Sebastopol. Hewlett-Packard encouraged him to go back to school and get his BS degree because it was very important for the future of him, his life and his career at Hewlett-Packard. That was a really rough time for us because they gave him 2/3 of his salary, but the 1/3 I earned didn't even equal the 1/3 he lost. So it was a really tough time economically. But we made it through, and he, bless his heart, went to UC Davis, finished up his degree. It took 2 years, but he got his BS degree and was done with school. And it was hard on the kids, too, because he was gone all during the week. He'd come home on weekends and be buried in the bedroom studying. And so they really did not get to see much of him. He tried really hard to juggle everything. And we were, like I say, into old cars. The first car he bought me to drive because he was 30 miles away. If something happened to the kids, I needed a car to drive. So he bought me a 56 DeSoto from a guy that became a very dear friend of his. And I drove that car and several other 56 DeSotos because it was a car I knew how to drive. He knew how to fix it. He could sit in a chair like this and talk to a guy on the phone who was underneath his car and tell him exactly what bolts to undo to get something out of the car. That was how well he knew the cars for 56. And he bought a after we moved up to, I think it was after we moved up to Sebastopol, he bought a 56 DeSoto Adventurer. And that was, at the time it was purchased, brand new, it was $5,000. He bought it from the original owner. He was so proud of that car. And he has, after we moved up to Sebastopol, cars kept migrating toward him. He would hear about a car in a field and bring it home. And unfortunately, our next door neighbor did not like all these old cars coming home. I really think he was very jealous of Roger. But we continued to do what we could with the kids, and they were really great kids. I miss them terribly now, but I made the decision to move here on my own. After Roger died, I could not take care of the property. I was almost to the point of a walker then, and so I just decided to move here and learn more about my family in Park City. And I enjoyed it because a lot of people had heard of my father. He had a very good reputation as a hoist operator at the Silver King Mine in Park City. And so I've enjoyed learning about his life. And he and my mother had a really good life, it sounds like, even for the period of time, if you can imagine living in a mining town. It's been all very interesting learning. I go practically once a week to Park City for lectures, and they have lectures on different aspects of life in Park City during the mining era. And so it's really, really an interesting thing. I'm going to one next week that has the nuns that were here at Park City High School. And so that was really good. I'm looking forward to hearing about that because they're long gone now, of course. We joined in this process of having these old cars, a 32 Nash. Also, Roger bought a 1925 white truck. All he had was a frame and a chassis. I managed to get a black eye trying to get into it was so big that it was right next to the dryer, the front end with the shocks, big heavy shocks on the front. And I went to get in the dryer to get some diapers and gave myself a black eye. So I haven't forgotten that. But he finally sold the 1925 white truck after he got it running. It was going to go to a guy in Santa Rosa who was going to put a bus body on it. We never heard whatever happened to that truck. It's probably maybe in a truck museum now. But it was running. And then, like I say, we had the 32, and we had several 56 DeSotos. And we managed to hide them all in our house and around our property in San Jose until we could get moved up here to Sebastopol. What we did then was we had collected about 4 or 5 cars. They were parked outside because the house only had a 2-car garage. So we put the Adventurer and the Nash in there. The other cars sat outside, and our neighbor did not like that at all, even though he could not see the cars from his house. He complained bitterly to the county. And so we ended up either having to get rid of the cars or build a barn. So Roger bought a 10-car barn in pieces metal building. We had the concrete form pad laid down, done by a construction company. And then Roger built the building. It was he said, like a big erector set. Our neighbor, of course, was very unhappy all during this time because he didn't want to look out at the yard, at the barn. So he was just an unhappy guy. And unfortunately detracted a lot from our enjoyment of being there. But we managed to hang in there, and we had one Christmas I'll never forget, that we couldn't even buy our kids some Christmas presents because we had to pay our attorney. He was threatening Roger all the time. And Roger would go out to his car in a parking lot in nearby Sebastopol where he went shopping and find a tire flat. Obviously, the guy had been there and he did something to the car. And so it was not an easy time. If we'd had our brains, we probably would have moved from there because people were encouraging us to move. And we liked where we were. It's a beautiful lot out in the country, and my kids had room to ride bikes on a private lane, so they didn't have to worry about them being out in the street. My daughter had a lot of friends that lived on the lane. Unfortunately, my son, there were no boys on the lane. So he was kind of left out of the loop. And he has told me since then that it wasn't that great a place for him. We did take them any place they wanted to go. We drove them to 4-H. They went to St. Rose Catholic School. I was Catholic. My husband became a Catholic on his deathbed, but he did raise the kids Catholic with me. And we belonged to, like I say, several car clubs: Mid-Peninsula Old Time Auto Club, the NASCAR Club of America, and then we also joined the National DeSoto Club. Those are the 3 clubs we were involved with the most. Mid-Peninsula Old Time Auto Club was just a bunch of old cars like the 32 Nash. And we had a lot of fun with them. We would go with a group that had Nashes. One would be a good original. The second would be a very well restored car, but he cheated on the engine, so it was always breaking down. And then there was this rusty car. The 1932 Nash was called Rusty but Trusty. She would run very well, but she was all original, and half of her was rusty. So it was in a junkyard in San Jose. And so, but we started out with Mid-Peninsula Old Time Auto Club. We joined the NASCAR Club of America. We're number 81 in that club. That's how old it is. And the club is still going strong now. I was secretary for probably a good 10 years or more. I kept lost track of how long. National secretary. And then only reason I went off the board was because the doctors had told me that I would eventually end up with dementia. And I was scared to death that I would be on the board and let them down. And thus I had no idea what dementia was. So I got off of there, and we are lifetime members of the NASCAR Club of America. My husband wasn't that big on the club because he was into his 56 DeSotos. But we joined the National DeSoto Club and found a whole other group of friends. We actually put together a convention in 1970. no, in the 1999, I think it was, in Sacramento, California. And it was at that time the largest convention the DeSoto Club had had. They had people coming from all over the country to come to Sacramento, California, to be part of this. And I've been active in several club national conventions in California, helping to put the meets together so people could come together and enjoy their cars. I'm hoping that my kids will enjoy this video. I do plan on finishing a written thing that I've started. Unfortunately, I had to get rid of so much stuff in my house in Sebastopol that I think it's going to make me a little bit difficult to try to remember things. I had 2 boxes that I regret that I let go of, just memorabilia from our trips here and there and everywhere. I have one. We went to a train ride up in the Redwood country, and Roger, the train was getting ready to leave. I had car keys. Roger was nowhere to be found. So I started panicking, and I thought, nope, you got keys. You can get home. He can find his way home. Turned out that he had arranged with the engineer and the conductor to let him catch the train on the fly because he wanted to get certain pictures of the train. This was up in Willits to Eureka. And so that's one of our episodes that I have not forgotten. The other one that I really enjoyed was we had a motor car, a railroad motor car. And we would go places with the motor car club. It's called Motor Operators Rest. And I think that was the name of it, MOW. And we would go in California, basically one trip. We would do Jamestown in the motor car, and it was electric, and would go pop, 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 pop down the track. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every one of those rides. Would do them all over again. The one in particular that I enjoyed was we went down to Ely, Nevada. Roger's mother must have taken care of the kids because the kids were with us on that trip. And we traveled from California. Roger found a trailer that was good. It was called an old-fashioned SP pole trailer. And he sat up real high so he could see the back of the motor car when he was driving. And this was all done with the 69 Dodge pickup. And the trailer. We went down to Ely, Nevada, and we rode on the train tracks that went along the Pony Express right-of-way. So we got to see where the Pony Express used to go through that area of Nevada. That was really cool. And then we missed the steam train leaving in Ely, which really still bothers me. I still hope to get out to Ely to ride that steam train again. But we've ridden steam trains in Shasta, in Shasta, Jamestown, which was right near where the West Side Lumber Company was. Jamestown was just another town over. One thing that I've neglected to say is in our early part of our marriage, like I say, we went to West Side to investigate perhaps having a steam operation there. Roger bought with his friend a speeder that was there in the barn, in the garage at West Side, a little speeder shed. We bought that home and we used that on the railroad in Forestville. When that railroad busted up, the speeder went to Roger's friend's father, who had invested quite a bit in trying to help us get our steam operation going. Since that didn't work out, Roger felt that the speeder and the Plymouth locomotive, 5-ton Plymouth locomotive, that we co-owned with his friend Tom, and Tom was also Larissa's godfather, and they were just really close friends, and so we had the speeder and the Plymouth locomotive as operating equipment for that little railroad in Forestville that didn't work out. The equipment is still there on his property, Tom's father's property. It's in a barn, and I have no idea what the condition is. Supposedly, Tom has donated it to the Nevada County Narrow Gauge, but he's not dead yet, so it's all in his will. So heaven only knows what we're going to find. But I moved here with the hopes of being active in the Hebrew Creeper, but unfortunately that's run by the state. It's not run by a bunch of volunteers, so I could not be involved in that. I have ridden it several times. It's a nice little ride. It's a shame the dam was built because it cut off the ride, and it's not as long as I would like. We've been to Colorado. We rode 5 steam trains in Colorado. And our daughter went to school and at Forestville, Mel Molino. Our son went to Cardinal Newman in Santa Rosa. And then they both went to college. We were determined that they were going to get through college. And my daughter went to UC Long Beach, got a degree in interior design. My son went to UC Davis, just after, like his father did, to graduate, and he has a Bachelor of Science Engineering degree. And they're both married. My son and his wife have done a great job of raising the kids, and they're doing very well now. They're 16 and 17 now. I think Callista's 17 and Zachary's 21. Larissa had 2 boys and a lovely husband who died way too soon. He actually died 4 months after Roger did, and that was pretty hard on our family. He was a great guy. Her 2 sons, she has stayed with them through thick and thin, raising them alone. She's never remarried. And one of them, Brandon, is going to Vanderbilt University, and Zachary, Christian, is going to a college in Iowa. And they're both into hockey again. John and his family were very much into ice hockey. So they've been on ice hockey. We've got videos and videos of the kids we would go down to Manhattan Beach, where my daughter lived, and take videos of the kids on their ice skating. And so one of them, I think, is trying to make it a career. The other one is going at Vanderbilt. He's playing hockey, but I think he's focusing on accounting. I'm not sure. I don't get to talk to him as much as I would like. I haven't seen him for several years. But then like I say, I moved here and I made that decision on my own, shocked the kids half to death, and gave up 50 years worth of stuff in one house. I did have Roger when Roger died. He had 1056 Desotos. And in various stages of restoration. One was a convertible, and it had holes in the quarter panels that big. So I decided that of all the cars I was selling everything, I would take that convertible and get it restored. It was runny, but it needed to be restored to be presentable to drive. And I was halfway through the restoration with Roger's friend Dan, very close friend, and got halfway through it and was told I could no longer drive. So what do I do with the car that I'm halfway through restoring and I can't drive it? Dan had worked so hard on that car that I just gave it to him. It was probably worth $50,000. But money isn't everything. So Dan has both the convertible. There's a picture of it on that wall there. Both the convertible and what we call Mr. Blue. So he has those two cars. And he's still taking care of them. And but I feel like I've talked so much about our hobbies and stuff that I haven't said enough about the kids. But kids, I love you. Thank you for being so good. Anything else you need to know? Now you can see why they said to do me first.
No, it's hard because it's your whole life. It's a lot.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed doing it together. The only thing with Roger was that once he got into his Desotos, he just kind of let the Nash go. He did buy me a 57, but it just sat in the yard until I sold it to somebody else. And I had a 54 too, and he just wasn't interested in working on them. He wanted to work on his Desotos. Those he knew like the back of his hand. And but that's all I can think of at the moment.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
So you met your husband when you were a baby?
Mm-hmm.
So how many years did you know him? And then what was it like losing him after that?
His family, after we moved up to the log cabin, his family had friends in Washington. It was the pastor of their church or something. They would come up and stop in Portland, Tigard, to see us, and then go on the way to Washington. They did that several times over the years, and then we just maintained a friendship. And then when I was when we were both 16, they came up again. And at this point, we were living in Portland, Oregon, in the house on Division Street. And I was a typical teenage. And his mother kept telling my mother that Roger's very shy. Tell Connie not to expect much. He just is not very outgoing. And so I was on my way to go to my girlfriend's house because I wasn't going to hang out with this guy. And he walked in the door at the house with his family. And it was love at first sight. I just took a look at those big brown eyes. And I went, whoa. And we were married 53 years. So, it's pretty neat. So what was the other part of your question?
How hard was it losing him?
How?
How hard was it losing him after 53 years of marriage?
Oh.
And leaving your babies?
Very hard. And it all happened so fast. He went to the hospital. He's had heart surgery, and he had a lot of allergies, food allergies, air allergies, that kind of thing. So his health wasn't all that great. And when he went to the hospital this last time, he just said he wasn't feeling good and he thought he should go to the hospital. And we've gone through that a couple of times. So I drove him to the hospital. It turned out it was right at the beginning of COVID. So I got him to the hospital, and I was following him into the hospital from the emergency ward. And they said, "Ma'am, you're not coming in." So he was in the hospital about 5 days. We talked on the phone a couple of times. One time he was trying desperately to get a hold of me. I was out shopping for food because I was trying to get stuff that I knew he could eat for when he came home. I kept that tape or that voicemail on the phone until I left Sebastopol because he was trying so hard to reach me. And I was out shopping only for him because I was trying to get stuff he could eat. And they did let me go in the hospital one night. By this time, he was on hospice. His kidneys were failing. His brother had died of kidney failure and had gone through dialysis and all that. He says, he told me earlier in our marriage, this was in Sebastopol, he says, "If I ever need dialysis, I'm not doing it," because he watched his mother go through that and he did not want to do that. So he chose at that point to have his life end. And he was on hospice, I think, for maybe 2 or 3 days. And then he became a Catholic on his deathbed. And I got to see him at night. One night they let me come in and visit him, and he was asleep. And I really didn't want to wake him up. I figure at that point he wouldn't have been too closeted to really talk to me anyway. His son did make it. He drove like a bat out of hell from Folsom, California to Santa Rosa to get to his father. Larissa, unfortunately, her husband was sick at this point, and she couldn't make it. But she was able to deal with the fact that she could talk to her father on the phone, so she did that. But it was a really hard time. Like I say, I haven't even begun to tell you that he had a train board in what used to be the old garage in the house. You drive around the front. The house was built in the 1960s. And that room was turned into a, quote, a 5th bedroom in the house. Well, that became the train room. And Roger had 4 4x8 sheets of plywood covered with indoor-outdoor carpeting, and he could run 3 trains at one time. And one would disappear under the board and come back up and stuff like that. It was really cool. A lot of guys would come and look at his train board and go, "Oh my God." And so that was his other hobby. So I was left with all his trains, and he had trains. And then plus the 1056 Desotos, a brand new pickup truck. His daughter finally talked him into buying a new pickup truck. He actually sold his '69 Dodge pickup for the same price he paid for it brand new. It was still in that good condition. We maintained it well. And so I had to get rid of all this stuff. And it was very, very difficult. Plus, it turned out that my house in Sebastopol, I should say our house, where the kids were raised, basically, sold within 1 week because the guy wanted the barn. He didn't care about the house. He wanted the barn. He was in Europe at the time he bought the house. He saw it by video, drone footage, and he bought the house sight unseen. And we also had something I forgot to mention. Roger brought me within maybe 5 years before his death. I always wanted a caboose. And we were going to buy one from West Side when we lived in San Jose in a 2x4 lot. And we never did get that caboose. It was called the sand caboose on the West Side terms. We finally, he came up to me one day and he says, I've checked on the cabooses, and this is after cabooses were no longer used on the railroads. This guy bought a whole bunch of them because people use cabooses for an extra bedroom, for just decor in their yard, a business office, stuff like that. He says there's only 5 cabooses left in this yard. If we're going to get one, it's now. And I went, at this point, I'd given up getting a caboose. We had one other caboose we were going to buy, and it was right when the kids were starting college. And I said, we can't afford to do this now. And that was a really nicely restored caboose, not too far away. So this time, I said, yes, the kids were through school. We checked with our financial advisor. He says, other people buy motorhomes. If you want to buy a caboose, go buy the damn caboose. So we did, and Roger restored it inside, painting. There was a lot of graffiti in it. There was a big snake on the outside of it, typical of train stuff. You see all this graffiti that's been going on. And so we had the outside painted immediately because we were afraid our neighbor. By this time, our neighbor's gotten old, and he wasn't too upset about the caboose. I never heard a word of him about that. And but I used it as a business office. Roger, at this point, was in the house a lot. He wasn't out working on cars that much anymore. It was all he could do to get the caboose moved in. We hauled it from somewhere near Folsom, California. It was in a junkyard there, and paid for it to be moved here to our yard. And it was quite a challenge. Our lot was narrow. And but we got it restored, and we had a lot of fun with it. I used it as an office because Roger was in the house all the time with the TV blaring. He loved watching TV. And that was really just about all he could do at that point, was where his health was. And so I would escape out into the caboose for peace and quiet. He had the TV on pretty loud. So I left the caboose there. We had out in the yard, we had railroad artifacts like a wigwag. We had a semaphore, 2 crossing arms, and he just bought these at various locations, and we put them in the yard in a nice fashion. I had over 100 roses. The yard was very nicely landscaped. Everybody always complimented us on our yard. And that's all I can think of.
Yeah. I'll have like 3 more questions.
Okay.
So first, what do you think about death?
What do I think about death? I think it's a welcoming event. I'm a very staunch Catholic, and I'm hoping God will take good care of me.
What do you think about life?
Think about life. It's been very interesting. Yeah, that's what I'm proud of all the things that we did. And I'm proud of my kids and my grandchildren. It's been a good life. And I'm ready to go whenever God wants to take me.